Hey, welcome guys. You're joining me here in Los Angeles, California. Continuing as part of this live Facebook stream with today's topic being all about can you build muscle and burn fat at the same time? We're going to talk about that today. I'm going to give you my thoughts on if this is possible, a couple of alternative ways, and also how to go about doing it and my experience on it. So we are filming live. I've got rid of all of the clutter. A couple of times I've been out and about, we've had weak signals, I've been in the house, and something that I'm picking up, a lot of you guys are saying, is it seems to be better, maybe more focused information, easier to interact with you guys when there's nothing else around. So we are in oblivion at the moment. There's nothing else here, just whiteness and me. So I've got the camera set up, I've got the mic, I've got my laptop down here. I can see when you guys are posting questions. So for the first couple of minutes, first of all, this stream, typically they should be 15-20 minutes. They usually stretch on to a lot longer. I'll try and keep it short and to the point, and also I'll follow up with this context, this information on my blog. I do a full article kind of streamlining what I talk about here. So the whole thing that we're talking about, building muscle and burning fat naturally, I'm seeing some people post comments already. I'll get to it in a couple of minutes, but while we're kind of building up some more views, everyone's kind of jumping on and getting used to this stream, I'll just start off by asking a few questions, or answering rather, a few questions. And then in about 3 minutes, I'll just start to talk and give my thoughts on if and how it's possible, talk a little bit more about bulking and cutting, my thoughts on that. So, okay, questions coming up here, I can see them. Get started. Okay, questions. So a couple of minutes, just questions. I'm just gonna shout out answers to questions I see. Ramus asking how old I am. 32 now, getting old. I started when I was 15, 16, and here I am, literally half my life later, or equal amounts of life, and never thought I would be doing what I'm doing, where I'm doing it. It just kind of all happened, but I was very interested in fitness, and that's the one thing I will say. If you're interested in something, regardless whether you think it's a career, whether you're going to make money out of it, just if it's something that you enjoy, find a way to just keep doing it. For me, it was just fitness, working out, and then on top of that, my background was media, video production, and all of this came together, and here we are, we're kind of watching it thanks to Facebook and their live stream capabilities. But no, I love this. This is a way for me to share something that I'm very passionate about, something that I feel I have a good understanding. I'm not going to put out there that I'm an expert in any way, but through 10, 12, 15 years of training, I understand a few things, and really just to be able to put that across to you guys and give you my way of how it worked for me. You guys can take it, you can leave it, it's just out there, and I'll put this video along with all the others on my Facebook video page. So that's your answer, 32. Okay, next question. Someone asking how far am I willing to go? Depends what the proposition is. Probably not that far then. Okay, Tuan, hope I said your name right. Let me go back to that question. Okay, we should be doing superset to lean gain or fat loss. Perfect question. That is exactly the kind of questions that I want to be answering today in today's stream. I'll touch upon that more later on in this video, but initially, I had the same conversation with a friend of mine, Michael, actually, who happens to work at Facebook. He came out and joined me here at Gold Gym earlier this morning. We did a great back workout, finished off with some pancakes at Firehouse. I had oatmeal and eggs. Anyway, we were talking about this kind of debate on if you want to lean out, should you be focusing more on higher volume, maybe dropping the intensity back? And I said, this is like the main question everyone's asking, and I've asked it myself plenty of times. My answer was, don't change what you were doing to get the muscle in the first place. And by that, I mean, if you're lifting a certain style, let's say heavy weights, pretty much straight sets, kind of in that lean, I don't want to say bulking, but if you're trying to get muscle, you're going to lift heavy, bigger exercise. I continue to do that. The only thing that really changes is my diet, the types of cardio, maybe the frequency and the rest days. So I'm definitely going to talk about that. But my experience is I found that by keeping the muscle full, by doing the heavier sets first, definitely include some more machine type isolated cable exercises in. So there is a difference I find between whether I want to get a little bit bigger and stronger, or whether my focus is more on conditioning, and can they kind of be done at the same time. So we'll get onto that. But initially I'd say for the most part stay with what you're doing, but I'll address that question in more detail later on. Okay, we're getting some really great views at the moment, 500 or so people watching live, so thank you for your time. Let's do another question or two. Let me just scroll up. Top question that I've just seen now: where can I buy your workout plan and food plan? I promise I'm not just saying this one. Look, everything's on Rob Richards Fitness. I've got my book here. I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's my nutrition book, 17 chapters. I wrote this. Muscle and Fitness published it. This is everything I know about nutrition. Check it out, Rob Richards Shop. I'll put a link as well below. But that's nutrition. We're going to talk more about training. But you can find everything on robrichardsfitness.com. All of my training, my full diet breakdown, many of the questions that I see you guys posting. Just go to the search bar and pretty much type that question in, and there's likely to be some kind of content that will fit that context, if that makes sense. Okay, let's do a couple more questions. Okay, Reese, I've got to answer your question. Should you lift weights to make bigger muscles, or do Zumba instead to make muscles bigger? I see where you're going with this one. So Zumba, like with any kind of, let's call it group exercise class. Any kind of exercise class typically works on more endurance rather than, let's break it down to the bare essentials. When you build muscle, it's about essentially overloading the muscle, more stress than the muscle can cope with, by just enough. So that during your recovery time, what's happening is your body's repairing those muscle fibers. Think of it like all of your fibers like this. Every time you weight train, you're creating these micro tears, little tiny tears, which is a good thing. Okay, we're gonna have little disruptions here and there with the Wi-Fi, so bear with me if it just goes blank. I'll be back. So you've got these muscle fibers. Every time you work out, especially when you're progressively building up your intensity, you're doing heavier weights, just enough that it's a challenge to your body, it's gonna push you. You're creating these micro tears. You're not necessarily gonna feel it, it's not gonna be painful in that sense, you're not gonna hear anything, but if you're reaching your threshold, you're lifting to your full maximum capacity, and you might not be able to do it every exercise, every workout, but you know when you've had the best workouts. It's likely that has occurred, especially if you're feeling some of this soreness in the following day or two, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, which is kind of your body's defense of saying, all right, we've created these micro tears now, don't do any more strenuous exercise, we need to repair. Otherwise, if you keep creating these micro tears, go back and do the same thing, or at least work on that muscle, you're not allowing your body adequate time to properly repair. And that's a key factor in terms of muscle growth, something that I'm going to talk about in detail shortly. So to round off, these endurance type classes don't really apply that same stress to the body. There's no reason why the body should get bigger, stronger muscles if you're doing a lot of endurance type stuff. And that's not to say if you're doing a weight type exercise. The fact is, if it's over a period of time, like 45 minutes, for example, and you're doing a lot of, I don't know what Zumba is, a kind of a, you know, all of your movements, yes, it's great for getting you moving, great for even calorie burn, although I still believe that a good weight training session is the best at burning calories and boosting your metabolism, your metabolic rate, the body's kind of engine to burn food, fuel calories to enable everything else to work. So if your main purpose is building muscle, get in the gym, lift some weights, and we're going to talk about a kind of setting up that structure. But if you enjoy Zumba, if you enjoy any kind of aerobic-based, class-based class, definitely include that. You don't have to cut that out if you want to build muscle. If you want to be a bodybuilder, maybe if your goal is to be a bodybuilder, doing Zumba classes or cycle and spin classes. I know some who do as part of their kind of cutting phase, but in terms of muscle growth, focus more on the actual free weights, heavier compound, especially free weights, which incorporates many more of your synergistic muscles. The more muscles you work, so obviously deadlifts, clean and presses, these big multi-compound, they use a lot of different muscles, are gonna have the biggest effect in terms of stimulating a need for your body to have to get stronger, to get more, basically your body wants to do things at an easy pace. So the more you adapt in small intervals, the better it is that you're gonna be able to recover, come back stronger. I've kind of gone off on a tangent there, as I always do, but let's jump to into the topic of, can you burn fat and build muscle at the same time? I realize this is going to get a lot of people talking. Oh, Rob's right, Rob's wrong, this person said this. That's all fine. That's exactly the reason why I want to do these streams and start a debate, so to speak. And I can see people posting questions. So I'll talk for a few minutes. I'm going to break this down into 4 or 5 topics. I'll put all of these on my website within the next day or two. And then every topic that I kind of round off, and I'll go and answer a couple of your questions. So keep posting them. I do kind of scan through them and try and address them within this particular topic. So let's talk about, can you burn fat and build muscle at the same time? When people think of this, you're in a calorie deficit. This is what people think. You're in a calorie, so you're eating less because you want your body to use body fat as fuel, so that while you're doing your cardio or your weight training, your body doesn't have a surplus of energy, therefore it's having to rely and use body fat as fuel. So how can you build muscle by eating more? Because of course you need to eat more calories and have a surplus to build muscle. So how can they kind of go together? Well, that is the question, and this is what really got me thinking about it when I first started to compete. And here's what I did. I focused on conditioning. In fact, one of the competitions I did in 2005, I think it was the BNBF, St. Albans middleweight bodybuilding category. This is like 11 years ago. And it was the second show I think I've ever done. And I remember one of the, I did well. I think I won the first one. I came like top 3 in UK in the overall, and there was some big competition. But I remember one of the judges coming up to me, Brandon. His last name is going to be Stark, Brandon Greenfield or something, but this guy was phenomenal. And if doubt he's watching, but if someone knows him, they know who I'm talking about, then I have a lot of respect and admiration for this guy. He came up and he said, your physique is, like, your conditioning is on point. But don't forget, this is a bodybuilding show. And by that he meant I focus so much on the cardio and the diet that my muscle size, my fullness, and I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not a big guy. There's plenty of you guys watching who are probably in way better condition and better shape than me. And I'm getting back to that. But he came up and said, don't just let this be about diet and conditioning. And that resonated with me. I thought, you know, at first I kind of took offense and was like, I put so much hard work in. How can you stand there and say I haven't got enough money? I mean, I was 22 at the time as well. But then on the drive back home, and when it started to sink in, I saw what he meant. And that was, looking back at my training, I put so much emphasis into my cardio, so much emphasis into my diet, that the actual weight training sessions were almost a lower priority. And then thinking back, I did shift into this mentality of, okay, I've got to lean up now. This person said I need to do more reps. I need to do 15, 20 reps in cables. And I changed my routine. I was doing more circuit-based supersets. The intensity wasn't there. And guess what? My body changed. I got leaner. I got more sinewy. I got kind of, I had great conditioning, but I didn't have that muscle fullness that I did the following year. So, by the way, you can probably tell I'm kind of speaking about this topic with personal experiences. But here's why. The following year, when I went back to do that same competition, and Brandon was, he was a coach again and a judge, I changed my emphasis. In fact, I didn't really change my training. I focused, at that time, I was still kind of bulking and cutting, and I'll talk about that next. But I went into the gym, and for the next, 6 or 8 months, I thought, my priority here is to keep my muscles full. Keep them constantly having to adapt to the point where, imagine this was my bedroom wall behind me. Nice and blank, no posters up, minimalist. I would get these large wall planners, monthly planners, the big ones, and I'd put them all up. So I had my 3 months, if not longer, 5, I think, stretched out. and I would write on there what my weight wanted to be. What I kind of hypothesized, on show day, I want to be, and based on what I knew I was last time and knew I could be a little bit fuller and bigger, I said I want to be, this was back in kilos, the equivalent of probably 175 pounds, 81 kilos, math isn't what I'm thinking about right now, but I put my weight, and I said I want to be even leaner this time, because I'm carrying more muscle mass, so I should be able to get leaner. And I said I want to be 3% body fat. I'd never been at that level before. It was all new to me, I just wanted that. So I planned that out. My weight back here, which was, I was underweight, so I had to basically put on weight to compete. It wasn't like I was bulking at that point and dropping all the body fat, and I'll talk about that in the next topic. But I focused for those 5 months as though I was a powerlifter, as though I was a bodybuilder. I was lifting the heavy weights. I was still focusing on the weaker details, but certainly for 3 months out of those 5 months, I was all about free weights, bench, incline, Olympic barbell, shoulder, seated military presses, upright rows, just the big heavy exercises. And only towards the end of the final, maybe 5 weeks, would I start to incorporate a lot more cables. But I still wouldn't give up those bigger free weights. My energy might come down, my overall weights that I'm pushing might not come down, but the mentality was I'm in the gym, I'm lifting these big heavy weights, and I was still getting my cardio and starting to manipulate my diet, so basically restricting my nutritional intake. What happened was I then went back on stage. To this day, I haven't looked in better condition. I'll find a picture and repost it in the comment section. Obviously, I was 22, so you've got to take that into consideration if you look at that now compared to how I was. But the muscularity compared to my first competition, I'll do a comparison too, was 8 pounds more. And 8 pounds of muscle, or a kilo or two, might not seem a huge amount, but imagine that amount of muscle on an already lean, low body fat frame. It's gonna have an effect. And that's what I really found, that instead of trying to, within the span of 12 months, go, I'm gonna bulk for 8 months and then cut for 4 months, I found that at the end of that 12 months, I basically got fat and then tried to get all the fat back off. And sure, I ended up a little bit bigger, a little bit fuller, a little bit more muscle. That was year 1. Year 2 of competition, I thought, what if I just diet? What if I just diet upwards? And by that, I mean, I'm still gonna be consistent with my calories, my nutrition. I'm gonna diet, but allow for a little bit more. Instead of dieting down, I'm gonna increase my caloric consumption, focus on how much protein, carbs, and fats, still keep my cardio in check and not allow me to get too far away from that conditioning. And it was a lot harder to do. I felt like those 3 months of dieting was almost for a year. But the end result meant that I actually, instead of getting big and then cutting down and ending up kind of a little bit here, I did this. It kind of increased every 4 or 5 or so weeks. So there was a lot more of a conscious effort, but ultimately I was able to end up a little bit heavier, a little bit fuller, and still get my body fat right down. So think of it this way. I kind of did small, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks of a slight gain, so not bulking, and then dropping it down a little bit. Maybe a week or so I felt like I was starting to lose my abdominal definition. So I added a little bit more cardio in, which dropped me back down again. But then I started to push the calories back up a little bit and focus more on those heavier weights. So can I build muscle and burn fat at the same time? I'm gonna say no at the same time, but within a period of time, I do believe it is possible to focus more on these shorter periods of, I'm not gonna bulk, but I'm gonna maybe cut back on my cardio. See, look at everything as influential factors. Weight training, definitely. Diet, definitely. Cardio, certainly for me. Supplementation did give me that slight edge, certainly mentally. And let's say rest. So those 5 key elements: weight training, nutrition, cardio, supplementation, and rest. Really, if you bulk, we're gonna cut back on cardio, maybe supplementation, because you tend to think of those as, all right, it's cutting time. Let's get some fat burners in there. Let's get all the glutamine and BCAAs so that we're protecting against muscle loss. So really we're just going haywire on our calories and getting in the gym and just think about this. Are your workouts really as good when you're off season than when you're in shape and you're really connected, you're turned on, you've got that mind-muscle connection just locked in, you know you look good, you can see yourself in the mirror, you're not trying to cover everything up and you go, let's rock it, let's have a good workout. It's those kind of workouts that I feel I get the best micro tears, if you like. The workout that I posted on my Snapchat, which is on my Facebook now, I did it last Saturday. I don't know, I got some new shoes. I was training with my workout buddy that I see once a week or now and again. His name's Marcin. And it was just the right time and we had a great workout. And I was actually lifting more weights than when I was in my off season or not really focusing on conditioning. So the mental process, your actual mindset will have a big impact on that. And if you're anything like me, when you are bulking or you're not really focused on your conditioning or you're not as lean as perhaps you want to be, there's definitely this psychological factor that you don't want to, for me anyway, I don't want to wear a tank top if I feel like my arms aren't as defined or cut. I just don't feel as good. And that was a big learning point for me, is I want to feel good about what I do. I don't want to just get ready for a competition and then for several months, you know, I've gone through that. I'm sure many of you have or are thinking about it. And I love the competition aspect. If you do it for the right reasons, and maybe I will compete again, that's to come. But it taught me so much about my physique. It taught me about learning nutrition, about my body, about weight training. So it was definitely a good experience for me. Off the back of that, I also learned that I'm not going to live my life for a competition. I'm not going to try and bulk for 6 months and then quickly reverse everything, drastically cut down my calorie, bump up cardio and do hours a day for that one chance of being on stage and hoping that the judges look at me and hoping that the level of competition hasn't worked as hard as me. So you got to really ask yourself that. And I came to the conclusion that I can still look good, I can still make improvements and gains over an extended period and still feel good about myself and still have conditioning and still just enjoy my workouts whilst allowing for, I don't want to say a slip up in my diet or cheat meals, but still being able to eat out, still being able to hang out with friends and not have to be like, oh, I'm dieting. So that's kind of how I think of my off season, is I just don't have all of these 5 elements perfectly aligned. And so when I'm dieting or really focused on that cutting phase, I do, everything is in check. So think of it as your default is this. If you're focusing on your training, your nutrition, your supplementation, cardio, and rest, recovery, imagine you were living that every day of the year. So you're constantly cutting. You're not going to be able to make gains, are you? So what if you ease back on the cardio? What if you allow a little bit more flexibility on your calorie intake? The more proteins, a little bit more carbohydrates at times. You're still not just saying, to heck with it, we'll just see what happens and I'll eat and lift heavy weights and therefore muscle will get bigger. Yes, but at what cost? How much body fat are you then going to have to lose, which by default will take some muscle mass with you? You can't exclusively just lose body fat. You can't exclusively just build muscle. There's always a mix, a ratio, which based on some readings that I've seen and from my own experience, for every 4 pounds of fat that you lose, you're going to lose about half a pound of muscle. So if you've got to lose 20 pounds of fat, there's a realistic chance that you can say bye-bye to 4, maybe 5 pounds of muscle. So think about that conversion. Think about the weight that you're going to end up at. Oh, I'm 175 pounds now. I'm going to bulk and get up to 200 pounds. All right, so I'm 25 pounds more than I normally am. How much of that is really muscle? Have I put 25 pounds of muscle on? Heck no. Have I put maybe 18 pounds of body fat on and possibly got 6 or 7 pounds of muscle? More likely so. Even if it's half and half. So I put on, let's round off the numbers, say 20 pounds of total weight. If 10 pounds of that is fat and 10 pounds of that is muscle, because I'm just bulking, so why would I care about my nutrition that much or cardio? By the time I start to cut into my cutting phase and add some cardio back in and drop my calories back down, I'm probably going to lose, those 9, 10 pounds of muscle, but but at what cost? Sorry, the fat, but at what cost to the muscle? Easily, I'm going to lose 3 or 4 pounds. So within that bulking phase and cutting, I've added up an extra 3 or 4 pounds of muscle over, let's say a 4 and a 3, over a 7 or 8 month period. Okay, now, what if those 7 months or 8 months or a year, I said, I'm not going to bulk, but my emphasis is going to be on dieting, but with less cardio and with a little bit more calories. What's going to happen? Well, I'm going to lose a little bit of conditioning, but it's not like I'm going to start to get fat. I'm keeping my muscles primed. I'm in the gym lifting these big heavy weights. My nutrition is controlled. I'm not gorging or eating bad food. I'm just eating a little bit more. Maybe if you want a number, I do it in stages. So I kind of, after a competition, I have a couple of weeks off and I'll diet up essentially. Adding in 250 calories up to 400 or 500, maybe 600 or 800 calories at most on top of what my body needs. That's enough of a surplus to allow my body to realize that it's not in a dieting phase. So it can start to retain a little of that surplus energy, and my muscles can absorb more of that. My glycogen stores are going to be a little bit bigger. My body knows that it's not in a state of depletion. It's going to resist using body fat. That's another thing. If you're kind of dieting in that loose sense, but you're not forcing your body into this kind of controlled starvation, your body is actually going to be a little bit more or a little less resistant in terms of giving up body fat as fuel. So on that level, if you prime the muscle and through your cardio and certain times, almost focus on your cardio as a fat loss, which is why I do cardio in the morning fasted. Primarily, my body fat is going to be the preferred source of fuel. But as long as I get adequate nutrition in throughout the day and my focus in the gym is there, I'm lifting the heavy weights. And then when I eat, all of that nutrition is pretty much then focused on muscle replenishment rather than going to body fat. There is a sense that you can kind of use body fat as fuel for the body at certain times. And then with your weight training and adequate nutrition, rest, and possibly supplementation, supply those surplus calories back in that your body needs to know that it's not in a kind of controlled starvation. And therefore, you can start to, over weeks and months, see your weight increase. And if you're not, go back to the drawing board, which for me was always my diet plan. Focus on, am I having enough calories? Let's bump my cardio down. Let's drop my cardio down and bump up my carbs by another 100 grams this week and see what happens. Everything is a little test. So give yourself a period, at least a couple of weeks. Whatever it is that you're doing, focus on that end point. So I'd kind of, my 7 or 8 months would go like that. Lots of talking I have been doing. Let's go back and get to a couple of questions. So let me scroll them up here. We got a lot of questions. Let me open up the laptop again. It's kind of difficult watching on the phone because the questions are coming up on the side, to my side here. But after so many questions, they just, they pause. So I've got to keep scrolling through. So I got the laptop here. See what a couple of the questions being posted are. I'll talk more later if you want to continue watching about the kind of my calorie intake, types of cardio that I do, whether I do it after training, early morning. I've already mentioned about that briefly. But this really is one of the most topics that people want to find out the most about. So I've spoken briefly about my experience with that and how I actually favor more of a longer gestation period, if you like, of letting the calories up a little bit and holding back on the cardio, and I've seen good results from that. Okay, refreshing the page now. We're running the Wi-Fi into the ground. All right, here we go. So if you want to keep your questions posting, keep that going. I can see on the screen down here, I've got my laptop. Let's get to some questions. Okay, I love the computer, but when it's slow, it's one of the worst things. Here we go, here we go. Okay, just gonna answer a couple of the questions that I first see. I cannot pronounce that Russian name at all, but someone asking about will carb cycling burn muscle as well? Do you mean burn fat or burn muscle? It's No one wants to be burning muscle here. I mentioned this in a video or two, so I'll refer you to that. It's on my playlist. It's about carb cycling. Yes, carb cycling was a great way to kind of continue to coax the body into using up more body fat as fuel after that second or third day of a reduced carbohydrate intake. And then by the fourth day, or if we did more of the simplified version by the weekend, bump up your carb intake by a controlled amount, which kind of gives your body a sign that it's not in a state of depletion or starvation, I like to think of, which will halt any potential muscle catabolism, affect your hormonal level as well. So if you kind of go through periods, you know, maintain your calorie intake, maybe a slight reduction or increase, and then you can carb cycle, and then you go back to kind of like how a canal boat ever goes through docks. It goes through, the water goes up, it continues along, that's how it goes uphill. If you picture that metaphor as a way to build muscle, maintain something, adjust, maintain and adjust, and based on the results that you get, you can make the adjustments. So carb cycling is a really effective way if done correctly. Otherwise, it's kind of just guessing, and then you cause too many fluctuations with the body. And when you've got all of these fluctuations going on, it's often harder to pinpoint whether it's this or it's that affecting you. So change one thing at a time, allow for at least a week, see what kind of results you get from that, and then you can make adjustments based on that. Okay, a few more questions. Okay, Owen asking if I eat much red meat and how it compares to chicken. Red meat, I'm big on red meat, especially pasteurized red meat, cows that have been, you know, freely roaming around, because by doing this, they have a much higher concentration of GLA, these healthy, essential fatty acids that we need. It's one of the best sources that you can get them from, as well as salmon. So I do eat red meat. It's also higher in the kind of naturally occurring creatine, as is sashimi rather, you know, fresh fish. So I do eat them, and I actually find eating red meat before a workout, possibly because of this, I get sometimes a better lift, and it's kind of fallen into that routine. So I eat red meat pretty often. I know people have their thoughts about that. I personally haven't experienced anything bad about it. I might eat red meat. I might eat it 2 or 3 meals a day, one day, and then other times I might have it once every other day. So I kind of rotate my proteins around, even though I have a fixed calorie intake, protein, carbs, and fats. I will rotate. I get bored of it too sometimes. I don't want turkey for weeks, so I'll have turkey at times and get creative with some of the recipes, and then I'll switch it up and go for chicken or tuna or other fish or salmon. But yeah, I say the quality of the red meat is important. I know people are concerned more than ever now about whether it's doesn't have antibiotics, whether it is pasteurized, or whether it's more of a controlled mass GMO type thing. So if you're able to get good quality meat, I try to focus on it most of the time, but sometimes turkey is on sale, and providing it's a lean turkey and I'm checking that it doesn't have anything else added into it, I'll go for that. Okay, a few more questions. Someone asking how much creatine is in red meat. I don't know the exact amount, but it's definitely red meat, and sashimi has the highest, one of the highest creatine levels per serving for food. Okay, Sam Griffin asking my thoughts on vegan diets. Listen, if you're vegan and you've got your own beliefs on that, then that's great. I'm not a vegan, so my thoughts on it is just, it's not for me. You're gonna find it, I know that's probably not the answer that you're looking for. We all have different beliefs, we all have different approaches, strategies that we want to follow. I'm probably not the person to be looking for towards vegan advice. There's plenty of other people out there, and some really bad advice coming from certain vegan people, but hey, that's what the internet's for. Okay, complex carbs at night, good or bad? This is by Danny. Nova is your name. So I talked about this a little bit on a past stream, and that was in the sense of, if you're a conditioned athlete, regular fitness enthusiast, you're lifting weights, having carbohydrates towards the end of the day or in the morning doesn't have as much of an effect as if you're more, you lead more of a sedentary lifestyle, and your body's not going to be used to it. So the fact that our muscles are kind of more primed to deal with absorbing or digesting, absorbing and uptaking of glycogen, sugar from carbohydrates, it's going to be a little bit more used to doing that. So it's not necessarily going to, or if you eat carbs, you're going to get fat. With that said, I do believe that your workout has a big impact on that. So if you're weight training in the evening or after work, maybe 5, 6, 7 p.m., carbohydrates within the period after that, even if it's a couple of hours after, your body's going to have much more of a need for those carbohydrates. Still, it's got to be the right type, it's got to be the right amount. It's not like eating endless amount of donuts or bagels and going, yeah, but it's going into my muscles. So you've got to take everything with the right approach. But I've had workouts at night and then found that, or in the latter part of the day, and found that I probably still have 30-40% of my carb intake after that, even if it's up to 8 or 9 o'clock. So I don't think it's really going to hurt your chances of muscle building. I still fall into that category of, oh, I'm going to have my carbs early on in the day and then limit them more towards the end of the day. It's just how I think, and it works with my schedule. But listen, if you're weight training more towards the end of the day, carbohydrates will be able to allow your body to recover and replenish those muscle glycogen stores. Okay, questions here. Someone asking, Ricardo, if I use the Stairmaster as cardio. Yes, that is one of my least favorite, but one of the better machines for cardio. 20 minutes on there, even if I'm not doing HIIT training or interval training, it just works basically because I'm lifting my body up. It's a lot more energy required by my body. So because I'm doing this for a length of time rather than really tapping into muscle stores, for example, if I'm doing more explosive, high intensity stop and go cardio where it's a mix of muscle glycogen and body fat, 20, maybe 30 minutes on a Stairmaster, I'm sweating more than any other machine. Got my headphones on, I'm trying not to hold on too much up at the top. It's kind of lightly and let my body do most of the work. That's another thing. If you're out doing treadmill cardio, you've got the incline jacked up, are you holding, like how much work are you really doing? Are you holding on, walking on that incline? Try taking your hands off and stick with that same level. Unlikely you're going to be able to maintain it. So drop the intensity down a little bit, and if you're doing more of the lower intensity, steady state cardio for time, do something that is more maintainable. I mean, of course you can push it up a little bit, but ultimately you want to get your body into a sense of it's using up energy without putting the foot too hard on the gas pedal. Kind of think of it like that. That's my thought with that. But yeah, definitely, I mix and match. So with cardio, even though I include it in my technically off season, I may not do as much. I might only do 2 or 3 sessions of maybe 20 minutes. Whereas when I'm in my cutting stage or coming up to that, I kind of mentioned more is that instead of bulking and cutting. I'll increase my cardio. In fact, within the blog that I'll post, I'll try and start on it today, but as you can see, there's a lot of information. I'll pretty much bullet point what I've spoken about and then expand upon, here's my off season, here's the regularity, the frequency, the type of training, everything from my calorie intake, basically a snapshot of how I do it. And then you can kind of look at it as a reference and either say, this guy's out of his freaking mind, or that kind of makes sense, I'm gonna try that. It's always, I'll put that out there. This is my experience, it's not the definitive way. I'll put it out there and you guys can read it, give it a try if you want, adapt to it, and then take what you want from it. So yeah, definitely with Stairmaster, great form of cardio. Okay, someone just posted a question that I was just talking about. Okay, a couple here. Lou asking if I change my macros on a rest day. No. I know a lot of people do, and I completely see the reason for doing that. My reason is just consistency. It's just easier for me to eat the same pretty much every day. Not always the same foods, but fueling my body with the same basic amount of nutrition in the same basic proportions and food groups. So I'm happy eating the same meal for weeks and weeks and weeks. Although I can switch up the type of protein, whether I want turkey or chicken, I'm gonna add some beef in, and make it fit within my macros. And that's not quite the same as the flexible dieting where it fits your macros. It's just a very basic approach to eat the same, control your intake, control your timing, and based on the results you get, you've got a fixed variable that you can go back to and adjust and change. That's always been my way. But basically, no, I don't. I consume the same amount of daily calories on a rest day. So yesterday I didn't work out. I just needed a complete rest. So I ate the same types of food. The only thing that really changed was my post-workout. I obviously didn't need a post-workout. So whereas I've kind of got my protein shake and my second post-workout meal, a smaller meal, grouped relatively together, I looked at whatever protein, carbs, and fats that amount was and kind of absorbed it into a food. And because it's typically a higher carb intake, if I'm really going to focus on my numbers, I kind of distributed that carb. So I grouped my post-workout meal together, whatever that might be, this much protein, carbs, and fats, and said, all right, I'm still going to have this meal. A little bit higher carbs, so I'm going to take some of the carbs and just put them in the meal before. So I kind of redistribute my carb amounts, but essentially my daily calories remain the same. People will no doubt have different thoughts on that, but that's just my way. Okay, we're doing good. We're coming up to a 40-minute mark, so I knew we'd be going over. A lot of you are still watching, which is great. Let's go back to a couple of questions, and I'll kind of briefly finish off with my thoughts on a training structure and how to do that. Okay, as per usual, the laptop's playing up. Let's come over here and see what you guys are saying. Okay, Neil Booth, don't know if you're still watching, this was posted a while back, but cardio before or after weight training, HIIT or continuous to retain muscle and lose fat? Great question, definitely something that I was asking myself a lot of in the beginning months and years. So I've always found it better for me to do cardio after weight training. If I'm going to separate it, I do cardio fasted in the morning, then weight training later on in the day once I've got a few more meals and it's a different kind of energy system being worked. That's typically if I'm focusing on conditioning, cutting, and losing a little bit more of the body fat. So you kind of get a sense now that whilst I might not be trying to build muscle and burn fat exclusively together at the same time, there is a sense that I don't need to bulk to put some muscle on, some quality lean muscle mass, whilst also not putting on too much body fat. So essentially this is what we really get down to. It's a much shorter graph like this of slight increase in calories, but still keeping my cardio and some abdominal training there so I don't feel too crappy when I look at myself. I'm getting a little bit fuller, but then I might add a little bit more cardio in, hold back on maybe the carb intake or my calories for even just a week and then get back on it. So I'm kind of going more like this, much more of a wavy graph. But at the end of that 7 month, I actually have a little bit more muscle mass. And because I haven't drastically affected my, my calorie intake and the amount of cardio, I feel much better, I feel more relaxed with it, I feel more less rushed, and I feel like I've really put the hard work in. And as a result, my body is a little bit fuller, thicker, and you can just kind of tell it's more dense because I haven't shocked it by bulking and cutting. So I do cardio at the end if I'm in that kind of slight muscle gain. So I'm still doing cardio, but I might change the time and the type of cardio. I might not do fasted cardio as much. In fact, now, I don't really know what kind of phase I'm in, but I do my weight training early morning. It's just more of it fits better with my lifestyle. And with cardio, I'll either do 15-20 minutes at the end, or I'll do cardio towards the end of the day. So I'm definitely separating weight training, effectively muscle glycogen as the fuel, to cardio, primarily fat as the fuel. These are kind of, you can do them in the morning or nighttime. This is almost a preference that you can fit with your lifestyle best. As far as what type of cardio, I still mix it up. So if I'm doing cardio at the end of my weight training session, usually I'm pretty drained. I've had at least an hour in the gym. So it's easy to kind of do 15-20 minutes or longer of more of the steady pace cardio. But I find when doing that, I don't really get into it until that 15-20 minute mark. Plus, I want some food in my body for that muscle. Not that my muscle is going to be wasted away, but I still want to give it some nutrition. And if I do that and then do cardio, it kind of voids the purpose of doing cardio. Because if I've had a protein shake and then I get on and do cardio, my body has immediate fuel from that nutrition that I've just had, especially if it's in liquid form, to provide energy. So it's not going to be helping with body fat as much. So I do more explosive interval training, or at least try to, after weight training. Sometimes I'll just do 15-20 minutes on the treadmill or cross trainer. Is there any benefit to that? Yeah, sure, but is it going to be as beneficial as doing a 12-minute 10 intervals on the rower? No, I don't think so. Especially if you're weight training in the morning, you add in 10-15 minutes of HIIT training right after, your metabolic rate is going to be increased throughout the day for at least, more than a few hours. 8 hours, I read somewhere, by about 5%. So if like me, you get up, weight training, explosive cardio in the morning, even if it's just 8 or 10 minutes, you primed your body to be that much more responsive to nutrition throughout the day. So effectively, less is going to be potentially stored as fat and more is going to be needed by the muscles. Your body's just going to be more efficient at processing, digesting, and the uptake of nutrition. Cardio at night, maybe, for me, I just didn't have the energy. So it would be more maybe 45 minutes on the elliptical trainer, on a treadmill with the incline up, headphones on, or watching Netflix, or responding to many of you guys on social media. And that's fine too. So there is a difference between interval training and cardio. And I found, and more of that longer pace cardio, I found that there's different times that it works best for me, but I do alternate it and switch it up. All right, 2 more questions. This is it's been a good topic, so yeah, we'll definitely carry this on, and maybe once I've done the post, you guys can have a look through it, and then I can follow on with more specific questions, because as you can see, this is already taken some time. Helmut asking, so the best way to get lean is fasted cardio? It's the way I've always done it. I'm not going to say you have to do fasted cardio. There's just more, for me, there's more benefit in doing fasted cardio. Primarily because my body has no fuel, and if I do it, if I do it in the morning, fat basically has to be used more as fuel than, let's say, food that my body still has in the gut or circulating. And guys, I wouldn't worry about, oh, but my muscles are going to get depleted and lost. Listen, unless you're doing a 10-hour cardio binge and you haven't eaten much the day before, you're not going to continue eating over time. Sure, that will make a big difference, but look at it within a spectrum of a day. You wake up, if you're not doing cardio at like 10, 11 a.m. fasted, and therefore you're not going to get your first meal in so much after, then it could start to make a difference. But if you're up early like me, get your cardio in the morning, then you're having breakfast by 7, 8 a.m., followed by the rest of your day's nutrition. At the end of the day, you've given your body all of the nutrition that you were going to do anyway, but you've got that purpose of the cardio in the morning where fat primarily will be offered up as fuel more than stripping of muscle fat or just energy that your body has stored. Obviously, your body's going to store a certain amount of energy in your muscle cells, but that's why I like to do more of the lower intensity if I'm doing fasted cardio, purely because I feel there's less of a need for the body to offer up muscle glycogen and kind of get by with kind of like coasting on a car. If you're driving a car, you've got this big Hemi V8 or big Mustang engine, and you floor it, you're going to use more gas, more petrol, more fuel. So that's like the body kicking up its metabolic rate and giving you more muscle fuel. So if you're doing all of this explosive HIIT training, or you're doing a circuit where it's cardiovascular but you're still using muscular energy, potentially that's going to happen. However, even with these big kind of gas guzzling cars, if you're just driving along and you're trying to keep the highest MPG, miles per gallon, you're just cruising, you're not going to use as much fuel. In fact, if you've got a hybrid car, like a Prius, the car is going to use its electric supply. So if you think of your body like a hybrid, like a Prius, fat is the electrical power, and when the gasoline, the petrol fuel kicks in, that's your muscles. If you have a Prius and you can drive without the engine kicking in, that's the electrical power being used. Same kind of principle, at least how I look at it and see it. If you're doing cardio and you're not pushing it hard enough where your muscle energy needs to get used or as much, body fat is that electrical energy to the Prius, if that makes sense. So body, Prius, battery, body fat, petrol or gas, muscle. One way of looking at it. Completely forgot what the question was, talking about cars now. All right guys, I'm gonna answer 1 or 2 more questions just because there's so much to talk about. I'd rather keep it sweet and short in 20 or 30 minutes so that you guys can watch all the way through without getting bored or going off and do something else, the kettle or the doorbell or the phone. So let's okay, really cool question here. Is it possible to stable your body at 3 to 5% body fat for a long time? If yeah, what do you suggest to do? Because I'm feeling like I'm losing my strength and muscle mass in this while. Basically, the question is, and this is by Bhutan Asan. Hopefully I said the name right. Again, it's the question is, can you maintain your body composition, your physique, your conditioning? If you're low body fat level, you've got that conditioning and you want to basically follow that as a lifestyle. I've always wanted to do this, even when I get back into competition shape. I've just done a shoot. My last one was in Vegas in September for Inside Fitness. Still waiting to see that cover coming out. Arthur, if you're watching, what's going on with that? I got down to maybe 4 or 5% and I said to myself, okay, I'm going to maintain this. I don't care at what cost. I just want to look like this all the time. The problem I had with that was I was kind of putting myself into this funnel effect in the previous weeks and months, in the sense that I was adjusting my calories, I was adding in my cardio, I was changing a lot of factors so that I peaked. I got my body to this pinnacle point. And the best way I can describe this is like a pendulum. Think of a pendulum. I wish I could do the robot dance, but this pendulum, you know, I got a piece of string with a ball on here. I start up here, I drop it down. At some point, it's going to stop swinging. And that was the pinnacle point for me. I wanted to achieve almost a state for my body that I couldn't necessarily hold, but I could for a length of time. Now, after the photo shoot or competition, there's this just desire that I want to eat food. Not even bad food, but just not be restricted. So that was against me. Also, I was putting in more and more time doing cardio. So I tried just holding back and saying, all right, let's just maintain this. I did for a length of time. My biggest holdup was I felt too restricted in the sense that I couldn't go back out to restaurants. I couldn't eat more of the food that I wanted to. I love eating my food. If I didn't exercise or do my cardio, I'm not naturally lean. I'm naturally normal. I just put a lot of emphasis and time into my diet, my cardio, and my training to look as good as I can for most of the time. So it is possible, but your strength is going to definitely kind of decrease. And here's why I think. Picture humans way back, some 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago. I don't know what era that was, but in the Neolithic times. If we didn't eat, or our bodies was surviving on less than optimal food intake, and when you're at that level of body fat, in a way you've kind of pushed your body into a kind of controlled starvation mode, in the sense that your body doesn't have adequate amount, certainly as much as it wants to normally, of body fat, which is its reserve body fuel, reserve energy. If we were able to live like that, average people that you see, the kind of the main masses of the population, wouldn't look the way they do, which is just like humans. They'd be able to just walk around if they didn't eat as much and just be lean and have high level of muscle tone. When the body is kind of backed up into that controlled starvation, everything changes. It's going to be focused more on surviving rather than, oh, hey, let's put some more muscle mass on. Let's give him more energy. Carb cycling, and at certain times where you can affect your hormonal response, this can happen due to the kind of the fight or flight run. If your body's for 3 or 4 days at a slight deficit, it's going to bump up your natural testosterone in the sense that if you are a hunter and you're out and you haven't eaten for 2 or 3 days, I literally read this somewhere, that your body is going to allow you kind of one last explosiveness and boost of energy to go and kill. And if that doesn't happen, then it's going to just start stripping muscle mass, because like I mentioned in my past stream, muscle is that much more metabolically active. It requires that much more fuel. It's like driving along in this Prius with only so much fuel, and you've got all of this weight on top. The car's not going to perform as well, especially if you want to go fast. So the only way to do that is to get rid of some of that dead weight, effectively, that requires a lot more, you know, like okay, so having your air conditioning on, having the stereo blasting, having all the heat seats on, it's going to use up energy by the car. The car's going to, if it's restricted to fuel, it's going to want to work optimally without all of those things. So in a similar sense, if you're dieted and you're really lean, you're not giving your body its optimal amount of nutrition that it needs. So it's not going to allow you to continue to try and get stronger or have that same level of workout. Think of it like a graph where you're getting to this pinnacle point. Yeah, you can maintain close to that. I always go back to maybe 4 or 6 weeks away. So I'm allowing my body to kind of, that pendulum to swing back to a natural state. But I'm still holding it a little bit that if I want to increase my cardio, cut my calorie consumption down, I'm going to be able to pull my conditioning back. So whilst it might be possible, if you live that life completely, okay. For me, I live that life, but it's not my life. There's more to my life. So I want to be able to relax a little bit. And that's why I, unlike maybe some other people, don't walk around at ultra low levels of body fat, just because I kind of like the challenge of getting back into really good shape, coming back into just good shape, and then trying some different things and seeing if I can get back into that shape. So that hopefully rounds up your question. Okay guys, we're just coming up to the 56-minute mark. I'm going to wrap things up now. I will post more about this topic and we'll continue it throughout this week, Wednesday and Friday. Hopefully you like the simplified background. Maybe it just keeps it more focused on the topic. So many questions, several, probably I think 400 or 500 questions. So listen, keep them coming next week. I'll post a blog, probably get out by tomorrow. You guys can read it out, check out all of the information on there, and I'll include actual breakdowns of my training, my calorie diet and so on, and cardio amounts. And then we can talk more about that. So finally, if you haven't already, subscribe to my Facebook page. If you're watching this on a different platform, it's facebook.com/RobRichisFitness. Do these videos a couple of times a week, typically at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Most of the information about diet is in my book there, Ultra Lean, paperback, like it's a real book. There is an ebook version as well. Couple of issues with the transaction keys, but just email me on that, on the email that you get it, and we'll look into that and sort it out. Talk more about cardio and the types of training after in the following weeks. But yeah, listen, thank you for joining in. Really some great views and questions, and I'll try and touch upon more of them in the following live streams, which will be Wednesday and Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're in America, happy Memorial Day. I haven't mentioned that on my social media, but I know it appeals to a lot of people, and I mean it. You know, thank you for you guys for your service, as they say. So awesome work, everyone. I'm gonna sign off now. I'm gonna get some food. Had a little back and arm workout this morning, and I've lost that pump, so I've got to get the food back in. Thank you guys. See you back here Wednesday, and I'll continue to post information and videos on my Facebook page. So keep an eye out for that. All right, take care. Bye.